Hey, Snow.
Hey, MJ.
I kind of was wondering how people did this like on a daily basis, doing podcasts or broadcasting and then coming up with subjects and stuff to talk about. But this is like our fifth one that we've done in a week.
We're on a roll.
We are. Trying to
pumping them out.
Trying to get this all in before the holidays.
The holiday, yeah. I mean, it's going to get crazy.
Plus, we had to do one with Jim.
Yes.
Jim is a former Kingman resident. Well, I don't know if former because he's still owns a house here, right?
Mm-hmm. I do.
But he's on break from San Diego. And so I wanted to get him on while he was in town.
Here to talk to us. Yay.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we actually have an expert on for once.
Right.
I mean, we've had authors
We're always winging
it. But someone that really knows their shit. And I guess I had met you through Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And back when Dave used to post political stuff. And you guys had some really good conversations. And I interjected a couple times. And that's how we got to talking. And your Facebook page is just great. I mean, you're spot on with all your assessments of everything that's going on.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. But you said you were getting sick of it. I mean, Snow just recently deleted her Facebook.
After the whistleblower, I was like, when they can come out with a decent social media platform, I'll come back. But I don't really care for Zuckerberg that much either.
Yeah, you can see where it's been. I just see the corruption in the same sense, Snow, that and it just has the smell of death about it. It's like people's trust has gone away a little bit with this. And if you feel like you're being manipulated, maybe some people embrace that, but most people don't want that. They don't want to lose control of who they are, what they think. And to find out that that's really been the agenda, that turns a lot of people off. It makes you afraid to share things that you normally would find a little bit more intimate. You thought you were among friends, and it appears that you're being used.
Exactly.
So. Yeah, God, there was something that I was watching on the news, and then suddenly a product ad came up on my feed. It was something I would never search out, never talk about. Just weird.
Yeah, that's weird. Usually it's stuff like, I'll get ads, and I'm like, and I was talking about this stuff before. I'm like,
not searching it, but talking about it.
This is getting real annoying. I'm just like, and stop trying to sell me so much shit. If I want to buy something, I'll go seek it out.
Now, do you think Zuckerberg intended for the division that Facebook created?
I don't think he set out to create that, but I do think that he saw the vehicle that it became, in a financial vehicle. When he realized that you could funnel certain people into different avenues, different thought processes, and get them to thrive in there, that the people that are paying for that service, that are paying for these groups of people to be identified as consumers, that was really what I think made him lose that objectivity, straddle that ethical dilemma of what are you doing with the people that have entrusted you with their private information. I think that's where he lost his grip of what his real agenda was.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say what a lot of stuff boils down to is greed. Yeah, I don't think he set out to do it in the beginning. I don't think anyone would purposely do that, but then they see, oh, there's money in this, and hell, there's a lot of money in this. Let's just keep rolling with it,
Right. Did you see The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
I have not seen that program.
I mean, that goes into how
the movie with Jesse Eisenberg.
No,
plays.
This was the
Oh, I'm
documentary.
thinking The Social Network.
Yeah,
the movie.
This was the one that it talks about how if you're searching out certain stuff, it'll give you confirmation bias
I did see that.
about it, and
I did see that. Yeah.
And you don't get the opposing view. You just get things that
right.
It is self-fulfilling. It really is. And the deeper you go, the more it really hones in on your personal taste without conflict. And it's one of the reasons that I seek out that opposing view. At least not so much in the fringe side, but at least in the main channel, like Fox News. I'm somebody that's been a registered Democrat for 35 years. I know who I am. So what I do is I look at that opposing view on purpose, and it's usually on critical elements, critical speeches, things that are elemental in our government. I'll tune in. I already know what the Democrats think. I'm among them.
Right.
But I'll tune into Fox News and find out what their counterpoint, what their opinion is after a State of the Union address or any of those things. That's when I find it most interesting. That's when you find out what the tactical approach by, let's call them the opposition, is going to be.
Right. And I do the same thing, but because I like to look at it like, am I wrong? Is my opinion wrong here? Let me see what they are thinking.
It's an excellent way to challenge it.
And I think a lot of times, like I can sort of see, not the crazy cute ones, but I can kind of see the points that they're trying to make. I can see, well, hey, like I'm all for having a gun. Okay, that's fine. Nobody's going to take your gun away. But at the same time, do I want to see reasonable legislation on gun ownership? Yeah.
You know, like I really try to watch or listen to the other side. I really do, because I want to know what they think. But I find myself getting so frustrated right when I'm like, I cannot believe that they're lying to these people believe this shit. Or like I'll start laughing because it's so ridiculous, and I'm like, so I need to figure out a way to do it so I know where they're coming from, and I guess I know like because it's not like I don't want to know what's going on there. It's just I get frustrated with it. It just burns me up that they're totally, I don't know if I want to say ruining, but kind of ruining average good people. I mean, by the information that they're giving to them, and I understand like people want to trust in their news sources. They don't, like, we all have full-time jobs and lives. We can't sit there and try to go search out the truths ourselves all the time. Some of us, we're busy. So it's easy for them to distract folks. And
I feel, though, that is something that they've fed themselves to a point to where it's avoidable now. If you have to block out all other information, BBC, right, NBC, CBS, ABC, I don't care how many acronyms you use. The world news is basically reporting on the same subjects at the same level. Whereas then you have this fringe where you have Fox and you have OAN, and they can contradict all of that. And they have no competition. Whereas all of the other media is in competition with one another. So I contend that the frustration you're feeling with talking to other people and trying to maintain a civil dialogue, you're wasting your time. They already know that's a
Well, in the old days, though.
Yeah, I'm done debating them.
Things have changed.
To age yourself, my roommate, he's a conservative, and we can sit down and we can have a conversation. And when you have that conversation, it turns out you're really not all that far off, especially when they parrot something they heard on Fox News about what CNN said, and I'll be like, no, wait. This is what it's like. This is what the CNN viewpoint is, or the left viewpoint. Mm-hmm. It's not what Tucker Carlson is telling you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like, I mean, they'll do stuff like. I was talking to a conservative recently who's like started going on, oh yeah, well there's actually 2 good Democrats though. We've been calling their offices, Joel Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, we're calling them and thanking them. And I wanted to go, but okay, Sinema's my senator as well as this gentleman's. And I was like, I really wanted to say, what are you calling and thanking her for? She's, number one, she's like a pharmaceutical lobbyist whore, basically. I mean, not to be like, she frustrates me, so that's why I know I shouldn't use that terminology, but I'm like, so how does that conversation go? Thank you for keeping my drug prices high. I really appreciate. I love paying more than I should for pharmaceuticals.
Right. And if you talk to anyone a normal, everyday conservative, and you talk to them about drug prices, they'll agree with you.
Yeah, they don't want to pay high. Who wants to say, no, I want to pay like $500 for a drug that like in Canada they can get for like $25? Yeah, sign me up. Give me and hand me my stupid sign while you're at it. I mean, no one's. It's frustrating.
Before we get this into,
but I didn't say anything to him because I was like, I just let him go. But I'm like thinking, that's what I'm thinking though.
I tend to do that too. If they start to go off the rails, I kind of just tend to let them. I just listen to it.
I just kind of like listened and then left. You know, it was one of those.
I think what opened my eyes to the reality of the way things are and those struggles, those relationships, is one that I had with a family member. And he was new to politics. He was young. He was expressing himself on social media. And he knew me quite well as his uncle that has all this knowledge on politics. And I would set him straight, ease him down a little. Hey, that's not really accurate. I'd sideline with him, send him a private message. And he'd say, gee, thanks, Uncle Jim. I really appreciate it. I know you know so much about this, and I appreciate you telling me so I don't make a jerk of myself. 3 days later, he's saying the same thing that he was saying. So it was that realization that they don't want the truth.
They want to believe what they want to believe.
It's a script.
Yeah.
And they've already had it laid out. And when you step in that, depending on your relationship with them, is how cordial that's going to go. But you're not going to enlighten them. You're not going to convince them. They are going to repeat that when you're out of their presence as if they never learned anything. So it was a very unfortunate lesson. It was not uplifting for me. I was disappointed in that, and it hasn't changed. And that was in 2016.
Yeah.
So, that's the problem I see, that's actually grown in intensity. We're not getting closer together.
And we're getting further apart.
And do you see how we bring this back together?
I do, but I think there's going to be a big struggle in between there. It's going to be something.
How does that happen?
I think that unfolds in some of what Donald Trump and his followers are doing is going to come to fruition. Mm-hmm. There are going to be violence.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
It's really been expressed and fortified by his followers as of late, where they're asking, hey, when do we get to use the guns, things like that, in a public forum.
That was scary.
They're looking for authorization to do this. They're looking for somebody to say it's okay to go kill your neighbor. And, we're Americans. We're not supposed to have that kind of a response to one another. We're supposed to be able to resolve our political differences through some sort of voting democracy. And I think now that that's been identified as something that is detrimental to the GOP, that they're not winning at elections nationally, that they've accepted that. And now they've turned to the counterculture, to the attacking Big Bird, the other things that you guys have been talking about on your podcast. Those are the culture wars and the increased rhetoric towards violence, taking some of the Greens and the other radicals, Boberts, off the leash and letting them spread that rhetoric.
Oh God, yeah.
Let's start with, so you were Kingman born and raised. First off, how did you become a Democrat growing up in this environment?
That was tough, I guess. I come from a family of Democrats. My father and my grandfather were political students, I guess, for lack of a better word. They absorbed every bit of politics they could. I mean, the entire bookshelf in my house is nothing but Kennedy and Eisenhower, and it just goes on and on. Even the Buck Stops Here sign that was my grandfather's hotel office on Route 66 sits on my desk at Naval Air Station North Island today. So I was born a Democrat. I didn't have a choice. And over the years, that's been tested, obviously, being a guy that's been in my upbringing and in my occupation, that's been challenged. But
was Kingman always this heavily conservative?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, it was very closed-minded. There was always an anti-government feeling here. We even had domestic terrorism here when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. This is 1980. And there was a group in the Wallapies that were plotting an overthrow, and they were going to bomb the local post office. They just built that new post office in Kingman. And these guys were for real. They had machine guns and grenade launchers, and they wore fatigues, and you know the type.
What did they have against the post office?
I was a little kid and I didn't even understand most of it. Yeah, it was government and whatever function it served. But I mean, the FBI, the ATF, everybody came in here to King and turned this place upside down. So this has always been a hotbed.
It wasn't like the surprise that Timothy McVeigh lived here for.
No, he probably knew about that or had read about that and purposely came here then, because he went and visited Waco too.
Well, the reason he moved here was his friend that he met in the Army and served with in boot camp was Michael Fortier.
Okay.
Michael Fortier was from here. He was one of my best friends in high school.
Wow.
So,
was that friend a little nutso, or was he?
Mike was a really intelligent guy. He was actually really well grounded as a young man. He did have a political mindset. He did exercise some actual protest during high school and stuff, and some of the other kids. So he had that active kind of a mind. And I remember there was like 4 of us that hung out together, and Mike was one of them. And we would go to lunch together every day and all this, and we would chase girls and drink beer together, and we were the guys that hung out. And I remember Mike would get real serious about things about politics and stuff, and social things that really bothered him. But I joined the Navy right out of high school, and Mike joined the Army just weeks after me. Mm-hmm. And I even still have letters from him that he wrote me when we were in boot camp, about, hey, today I threw grenades and all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't see each other for a long time. We went our separate ways. I got married and went off and played Navy, and he did the Army thing. And he served in Desert Storm with McVeigh, and that's where he met Nichols, mm-hmm. and Terry Nichols. And I was serving on the USS Normandy, CG-60 off the coast of Florida, and the commanding officer of the ship walks into the hangar and he says, AE-2 Foley, come here. I don't know if I'm going to say that, but... and I go and I speak to the commanding officer, and he says, you're flying off the ship tomorrow. And they don't do this unless your family's been killed in a car wreck or something. That's the only time they ever fly you off the ship.
Oh, wow.
So I just have this grief coming over me. I'm looking, and the commanding officer doesn't normally talk to me. And he says, he assures me my family's okay. So I fly off the next morning. I pack up my sea bag. We fly off in the helicopter, land in Florida, and there's the FBI and the NCIS waiting for me as I get off the aircraft. So, and my first wife was there too, which I was delighted at the time that she wasn't dead. So
at the time,
they take me into this room, and it's got the mirrors, and it's the classic thing. I'm on NCIS. I'm a special guest, and they're showing me pictures of people, and who is this? Where were you then? And my alibi's pretty locked in. I'm in the Navy. I'm on a ship. It's pretty easy to track where I'm at. And Michael Fortier and Timothy McVeigh and that crew, they pulled off this bombing. This happened,
shit.
And I was a suspect.
No. Obviously, you knew about what had happened.
I knew the event had occurred. That's on the news, and even though I'm on the ship and stuff, it still was. It was in my knowledge that this terrorist event had happened. Yes.
But you didn't know that Timothy McVeigh was a suspect at the time.
No idea. I mean, and especially back then when we were on the ship. This is before the advent of internet. This is 1995. Yeah. So what news you got was basically through radio traffic or what you were authorized to receive. So we were extremely sheltered. When you were active duty back then, you were allowed to know what you were allowed to know.
So this was because McVeigh became a suspect within a couple of days, if I remember.
36 hours or something, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I watched the documentary thing on him, because I never knew what eventually had got him caught. He rented the van in his his name or using his credit card or something.
Well, it was actually, he got arrested leaving. The tags on his vehicle were expired.
Oh, and that
town,
too?
Yeah. And he got pulled over, and then there was all this stuff that didn't add up. And Yeah, he was in jail and he was almost released before they even knew he was the guy that was. Yeah, it was a.
Oh God.
You know, well, and everybody was so triggered to look for a guy with a turban, right? It can't be this nice white kid.
Yeah.
So, but I never met McVeigh, but of course I grew up with. I knew Fourier very well. Every yearbook from 7th grade to 12th grade, we're right next to each other. Our names, are one apart, and we look a lot alike physically. So I was a person of interest in that investigation. They suspended my security clearance, flew me off a Navy ship, and put me under surveillance, tapped my wire, my phones in my house, and everything.
Did Fortier ever talk about stuff like that when you were his friend? Like being that weird? No. Yeah, like that out there? Oh,
no.
Okay.
No. I mean, we were just kids, right? But he became more, I guess, indoctrinated into those circles.
How did that make you feel though once you found that out?
Oh man, I mean, betrayed. I mean, how it had involved into my life, and then there was so many just weird associations and coincidences. Like I happened to live 2 blocks from McVeigh's sister when I was in Pensacola. I mean, this young woman.
Wow.
And so the FBI was unloading all stuff on me, and I started looking around like, oh geez, maybe I'm guilty. You know, all these things that these people
I don't think I was there, but God, they're
so it was very intimidating, and to be in that situation and have somebody tell you you're not allowed to touch any, military weapons, no handling of classified information. And I was forbidden to speak to anybody about this subject either. The only person that knew was my commanding officer. So my immediate chain of command had no idea I was under federal investigation.
How long did it take for this to clear out before things could resume to normal?
Like 6 months before my clearance was reinstated, yeah.
Holy
so,
cow.
And they just came to me with no reason or explanation and said, hey, sign this, your thing's back, and just carry on. And it was even years later when I became a civilian that I got a subpoena for the Nichols trial in Oklahoma City. And I'd never met him or knew him, but just, they raked me out of the files. And so I had to go explain to my new boss, hey, remember that terrorism?
Remember that thing that happened?
Yeah. So, but, just knowing that I knew somebody that was involved in something that turned so horrible. And it was a huge black eye on Kingman, Arizona. I mean, for the longest time.
Yeah.
So we've had a really sordid history here in Kingman and Mojave County with that kind of violence, and domestic violence and anti-government for many years, for my lifetime.
Yeah.
So then after high school, you go into the Navy and working on helicopters.
Yeah.
And so we were talking beforehand, you weren't deployed at the Gulf War.
No, the first war, I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida, in a helicopter outfit, and which was good. And we ended up just stripping all of our stuff and sending those assets over to the war to fortify the Navy. Or the Army over there was going through a lot of components in the sand. And from there, I actually went back to school, got some higher education in electronics through the Navy. And then I went to a operational helicopter squadron in Mayport, Florida. And that's where I began my career in H-60 helicopters. And I did 6 years in that outfit, and it was really hard duty. You were gone 7-8 months out of the year for 6 straight years. It got me a divorce. I got a lot of ribbons and stuff on my shirt from it, and warfare pins, but a lot of experience, but it was tough duty. It was really hard. But I did a lot of time at sea. I spent about 3 years at sea during that period.
I guess we should say, being Veterans Day, just the other day, thank you for your service.
Well, most welcome. It's funner than you think. But, I did that for 6 years there, and then from there I went back to shore duty. They do a sea-shore rotation and have some balance in your life. And I went to Camp Pendleton, did Huey Cobra School again, and went to Corpus Christi, Texas, where I was the leading petty officer over a search and rescue outfit out of there. And that's where I met my current wife, who was also active duty Navy, and we're still together today, 24 years later.
Awesome.
And what did she do?
She was at first an aviation administration in the Navy, And then she became a career counselor, which is basically like a recruiter within the Navy to keep people within the Navy. So she retired after 20 years as a chief.
Yeah, but she would help keep SEALs.
Oh, her
recruited.
last tour of duty, yeah, was with Special Warfare. Her last tour was out of the North Island base there, where she was the career counselor for the Navy SEALs during pretty much the height of the Iraq War.
You'd think SEALs would be something you'd want to stay in as long as possible.
And
SEALs are badasses.
They are badasses.
And they're committed. There's not a lot of other jobs you can go do if you don't expand on that. So those guys are good at that. And the hardest thing to keeping those guys in is the retention, is the money. You know, you can go and do the contractor work and work for the different mercenary outfits for significantly higher pay and sometimes less restrictions. So that was a big challenge for the Navy and for my wife's billet specifically, and during that period was to retain those special operators in the SEALs.
Huh. Why did Robert O'Neill leave the SEALs?
I don't know.
Other than he wrote the book about killing Bin Laden. Have you heard the interviews with him?
No.
He's fascinating. Fascinating story. So then, were you ever active duty in a war zone?
I did my first 12 years with the Navy active duty, and I served 3 tours in the Adriatic Sea in the Bosnia conflict, and involved in a lot of maritime combat. I didn't carry a rifle. I wasn't an infantryman. I was a technician in the Navy. So the warfare that I was involved in was normally maritime, where we were supporting with cannon fire, basically shooting mortars and cannons off the ships, and helicopter operations. That type of support is what I was involved in. But plenty of time in combat zones and receiving combat pay and combat accommodations and stuff that went with it. But I had the choice early on to do that with the Navy, and I think that was the right choice. I went to see all the recruiters here in Kingman, and they each had a different deal and what they would accept. And I went home and I spoke to my father about it, who was a Navy or Army Vietnam veteran. And I told him what the Army had, and they had a better college program than the Navy did. And he says, "Do you like camping, do you, Jim?" I said, "Not that much." And he says, "Well, maybe you ought to think about the Navy, because the Army does a lot of camping." And I took his advice, and at least you knew you had a hot cot, you had a meal, and you typically had a shower every day. And Navy living's not easy living, but I think it's better than a foxhole any day.
Right.
Definitely.
I have a question about San Diego. One time I went and stayed with my dad. He would help work on one of his friends owned a roofing company and had a boat, so it was like parked in one of the marinas there in San Diego, and we took like the little boat out to like troll around, and there was something military there that they work with dolphins. They do stuff with the dolphins. What are they doing with the dolphin? Or are you not allowed to say?
No, that's well known. It's they're actually a protection area force. So there's a submarine base in Point Loma, which is just north of my base, North Island. So you can look right across and see the submarine base from the flight line where I work. And at that base, those submarines are protected by a team of trained dolphins. So if anybody tries to come in wearing scuba gear or bring a deep sea submersible or some threat towards those boats, that dolphin force is there to actually offset that risk. And we have a very similar thing in Bahrain.
Wait. So these dolphins have, say, cameras on them?
No, they'll attack you. They'll kill you.
What?
Yeah, they'll use lethal force to
How do you
bring
train
somebody to the surface.
How do you train a dolphin to kill?
You don't want to know. You'll never
I do want to know.
safe in the water again.
Oh my
I do want to know.
Yeah, they were the only part we saw was they would jump up, kind of like at SeaWorld, and they'd get treats and everything. So I was like, oh, cool.
But notice he had a scar, right?
They don't let you get that close. Like my dad My dad kept trying to drag the little dinghy boat like closer, and I'm like, Dad, I don't want to get yelled at. Stop doing that.
Rules here, yeah.
And he's like, yeah. So the guy's like telling him, I'm like, I told you to stay. I'm like, we can watch the dolphins. We can still see them jumping. Clearly, we don't want to mess with them. All right.
How do you successfully train a dolphin to kill someone?
That is the question. How do they pull the pin on the grenade?
Yeah, I mean, because there's only so much you can do with a mannequin.
But they also train seals, like or seals, and they station them in the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, where we have a lot of like the mine warfare stuff. So we have mine ships, and they tell you when you pull into the pier there, do not fall in the water. Those seals are going to take you and kill you. They're going to drown you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that is a very protected water line. So we train animals within the Navy to do that, to actually guard those.
Holy cow.
Holy shit.
I'm glad I asked this question. I had no idea
I
had no idea that kind of stuff went on.
Yeah, it really is. It's
I'm going to have to tell my dad now.
God damn,
Be
Snow.
like, Dad, there's
Don't
other
fuck with
good
those
reason
dolphins."
to not get that close, all right? If you fall out that dinghy, you're dead.
That's right.
Holy shit. How come that never made a movie?
Yeah.
Wow. We're safe to say this, right? We're not like any.
No, this
any
is
kind
not. This is. You can find this on the internet. There's nothing about this.
Well,
is
you can find anything
sensitive.
on the internet.
That's true. Nothing sensitive about that.
Okay. Let's do this one. What were your feelings on the withdrawal of Afghanistan?
Like any time we've left a war zone, there's no graceful way to do it.
Right.
Nobody was going to be happy. Nobody was going to feel complete. It was set up, known to be a failure. Paperwork had already been signed with the Taliban, ahead of time, that they were going to receive these benefits. They were going to inherit this. So there was no choice for the new administration other than to follow through with it.
Yeah, it was a no-win situation. If he would have stayed longer, he would have been crucified.
And it would have been the wrong decision. He made the right decision under untenable circumstances. That's the problem with politics. Is that was kind of set up. It was triggered. It was timed. There was a lot of work that had not gone into that decision making. Ironically, on the cab ride I had over here, the young man driving the cab brought up to me, I'm really upset with President Biden because I feel that he failed the exit of Afghanistan. And I asked him, what makes you think that? I was curious what he believed. Being as a person that served a lot of time in that theater, in that war zone, I have my feelings. I was curious what his are. Mm-hmm. He's obviously not a veteran. And his perception was that this was a new and spontaneous thing. And he's probably maybe 5 or 6 years older than this war. He's in his mid-20s. I mean, so it's been something that's been part of his life as long as he can remember. And that's something that's needs to be taken into account as we navigate through this as a society, of how we deal with veterans, how we deal with young people and different people's perceptions on these wars. Is there was no right answer for this. I mean, if you spend 20 years over there pouring billions of dollars a month and human lives into this, American lives, there isn't a win. I give a little bit of a credit to Joe Biden for taking it like a man and just saying, I'm going to accept and stay the course with, this is my decision.
Right, but talking about this taxi driver, but it's really easy to research, no matter what side you're on, where this came from. Like, the deal was negotiated with the previous administration.
It was actually celebrated by the previous administration.
Exactly.
They let everybody know, we're going to do this.
Now, and one of the few times that I agreed with that administration was on this. I was like, good, yes, it's time to get out of there.
I don't know anyone that disagreed with it.
And Donald Trump, to his credit, took office with that as part of the message, and that was a central part of the debate in the 2020 election between Trump and Biden as well. That was something that was brought up during the debates. Will you pull out? Will you do this unconditionally? And they both took this commitment that I will. So that wasn't a surprise. And that was something that I found really strange, that everybody acted like Afghanistan just jumped up and bit them. That isn't the case. We'd watched these two men get on stage and bore us to death with how they were going to get out before the other guy could get out. I mean, they really made a point of letting us know that was the inevitable choice, that we weren't going to send another generation of Americans there. We all knew that.
And because you worked on aircraft, do you know this, that the perception was that we left equipment behind there. We just didn't have enough time to get the equipment out. Now, is there a policy to disable these aircraft that you leave behind?
That equipment was actually part of the agreement that we were going to stand you up. The idea wasn't like, okay, we came into Afghanistan, we made you this democracy, we helped you stand up a government, and then we're going to take all the military hardware and leave with it, good luck. No, the idea was we trained their pilots, we trained their soldiers, we gave them this gear. They didn't have their own. They didn't open a helicopter factory or a tank factory. They had ours. So that equipment was literally agreed upon as part of, and not saying that Trump did that as a misstep. It was part of the Pentagon package of, hey, sorry for blowing up your country for the last 20 years. Here's the shit you need to maintain it against the extremists. Problem was that our administration had made a deal with the extremists. They had already negotiated with the Taliban. So the gear was intended for the Afghani government, but it was the Taliban that took over that government.
Right, and we did not expect the government to roll over so quickly to the Taliban.
We keep saying that. We've had a lot of military officials say that, but why would you anticipate otherwise? If you had a meeting and negotiated the surrender, the exit of the United States from your region, and you didn't invite the Afghani government to the conversation, it's pretty obvious what the outcome of that is going to be. You only invited the Taliban, excuse me. You didn't invite the Afghan government. That you stood up. And they understood that. And the Taliban understood that. So we broadcast that. The American foreign policy out of that administration, that State Department was, we know the Taliban's taking this over. So let's just, skip the dance. And that's what happened. And there's nothing that the next administration could have done to affect a change. The Taliban had that momentum and had it for over a year.
Why do you think that every war since, I think it's World War II, has ended messy?
Is there another way? I mean, how... We as Americans, let me phrase it this way. We as Americans pride ourselves through our Second Amendment tenacity that nobody's going to come here and take our country. No foreign invader, no tyrannical government is going to be able to take the United States of America because of our perceived resistance through our self-arming. I'll say as a military man, that is a very naive perception of what fighting is on a military level today. But why don't we also extend that same human instinct of I will fight and die for my way of life to other people? Why do you think you can go into Vietnam? Why do you think you can go into Iraq and make these people abandon?
Yeah, it's pretty presumptuous of us to think that.
Especially because we're the counterpoint to that. We are the most outspoken, proud, you can never bring us down, I will fight.
Like, not everyone has to be the United States. Like,
Yes, I said that after 9/11 when we went into Iraq. I said, because, well, first it was weapons of mass destruction, and that's a long conversation, but then it changed to, well, we're here to turn them into a democratic society. Where's it our job to force our beliefs onto them?
Right. I've said that for years.
And I said after 9/11, even in Afghanistan, I said that, and I wasn't the only one, this is an unwinnable war. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot fight an ideology and change their minds.
Yeah, you can.
And just the simple mistakes of everyday operations, too. A phrase my father used as a Vietnam veteran who was stationed in Vietnam in the Army, was one day you accidentally run over a kid that runs into the street chasing a ball, riding a bicycle, and that deuce and a half drives over that child, kills him. That family is going to hate you for the next 3 generations. Everybody that looks like you, that dresses like you, that sounds like you is the enemy to that family, an extended family, forever. Mm-hmm. So why did you think you could go in there and stomp all over these people and blow up their buildings and their places of worship and the things that are important to them and just stroll out? I mean, so why do wars end badly? It's because there's no winning. You either have to kill everybody there or you have to leave and leave a mess. There isn't really a different way to do it.
I mean, one thing I say, and if I get crucified, is the best way to, because we have this thing where we have to put our military on its pedestal, and we should. But my belief was always, well, the best way to protect our soldiers is to not put them in that situation, no matter what it means. Unless it means defending our home turf, there's a lot of times, why are we there? Why are we in, Bosnia? Why were we there? And yeah, you can find reasons. And I have all sorts of theories of my own about, the military budget and the financing behind it and why we keep on, like Afghanistan. I think we could have ended that a lot sooner. Yes. But it becomes this machine. I mean, I'm talking about the business aspect of it and the money-making aspect.
Yeah, it definitely is. A military industrial complex is what rules war, and it has for a very long time. There's no escaping that. We have made an industry of military combat.
Yeah, and I mean, even Eisenhower was against it, and he was a military person. It's like...
Well, one of the problems we have as a society in America is we see our soldiers and sailors and airmen as these nameless, faceless, tough guys. We really think of these people in uniform. When you think of a soldier, the stereotype your mind generates is this broad-chested man with a square jaw and a sharp salute. And realistically, he's that pimple-faced kid that's grown up across the street from you. That's who I was leaving Kingman, Arizona at age 18. I was just a skinny little kid joining the Navy, and I'm going to work on helicopters. So we're not all these big tough guys. We're not really emotionally prepared for this stuff. You see friends hurt. It's a dangerous occupation. It takes years off your life, the things that you're exposed to, the environment you live and work in. But we communicate it like it's, we support our troops, and we act like they're bulletproof, like they're people that are without emotion. And it's not the case. The average soldier or sailor is, 22 years old. How prepared were you to see somebody have their throat blown out right next to you, your best friend, when you were 22 years old? You wouldn't be the same today.
Right, and that's another point where, we talk about on our vets and how the left doesn't do that. But the left more stands for taking care of the veterans after the war.
Here's my thing, too. When they negotiate all the time for more money for the military, I'm irritated because I know it's not going to the servicemen and women. I'm like, no, if I knew that they were going to get like more of the money, even if it's like for like veteran services or whatever, then I would be more for it, but it's not. It just seems like it's more money for more weapons. And that I'm not okay with, because I don't agree with us. I don't agree with a lot of the wars that we had. I mean, I know that some were necessary, but in my opinion, that was like the Civil War. I mean, that was a necessary war because they were fighting against, slavery. And then World War II. I mean, that was a necessary war.
Well, drug into it reluctantly. America had withstood and had been resistant to getting into that war. But of course, the Pearl Harbor attack was what brought America into it.
Yes.
But there was plenty of things leading up to that we should have, taken the, more noble approach and entered early, and maybe hadn't gotten to the point of the huge amounts of genocide and things that happened across Europe. I have to agree with you, though, that we have left or ignored a lot of that we do for how we're going to manage that going into the future. And there's a lot of veterans that suffer and have a lot of issues that they can't resolve on their own. You know, this is not something.
They need help. I mean, PTSD is like
it's a
nothing
real
to
thing.
mess around with.
Thing.
Like, they need professional help to deal with that.
And there's some guys that have, guys and gals, some service members that have really seen some tough times, and there's some great programs out there, and I know that most Americans' hearts are in it. But I think it's really unfair that there is a partisan perception that those on the right support the veterans and those on the left that don't. I disagree. I would contend that my family, my immediate family, probably has more service than an entire block of anywhere else in this town. So don't give me I'm a conservative. We're a family of Democrats, and God damn it, we've got about 100 years of service between my family.
My family too. All the people in my family who have been in the military, all Democrats. I'm like,
Well, my dad was in the Air Force. So
everyone.
There's a lot more members of Congress that are veterans that are Democrats. There's a lot more decorated war heroes in Congress that are Democrats. So, that's always been a misperception. And I was told that when I first joined the Navy and I went to this technical school, and there was this Marine staff sergeant. He told us, you guys need to be Republicans. And I was probably the only person that was really political in the classroom. Everybody was my age, 18, 19 years old. And I was the only guy that actually came from a political family that was somebody who had already voted. And everybody just nodded or whatever. Yeah, Staff Sergeant said I should be a Republican, because they're for, and this was during
They
the
shouldn't
Reagan
be allowed
Bush
to
years.
do that either.
They're not supposed to do that, but they think they're taking care of you. And that is a perception in the military, is that, we're a Republican force. And I don't know why, because, Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, they gave us our biggest raises. They gave us the most benefits in the hospitals and the housing. I mean, it's a record. It's a congressional budget record. You can look it up. You don't have to believe me.
Right.
When Republicans are in office, we got really fancy guns to shoot that were overpriced.
Well,
when Democrats were in office, we got
that's Dick Cheney right there.
Right.
It was. That military industrial complex. That's how they generate a lot of that. So.
God, we could just keep on going about this subject, but we got limited time. Let's go here, though. The news the other day that Steve Bannon
Got indicted.
Indicted.
For not answering a subpoena.
It'll be Monday.
Now here's the thing.
He's turning himself in, right?
The law and order party. The law and order party is all about not answering subpoenas. We could not get away with that. Us as ordinary people. If Congress subpoenaed us for something, we would have to show up. Mm-hmm. And I would be scared to death myself of not showing up.
Of course.
No shit.
Of course.
Not like they can't find you,
Well, and this is a delay tactic. It's really more for that. It's a strategic thing. They know how this works. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. It's not as though Steve Bannon or Trump camp doesn't have lawyers, good lawyers. Mm-hmm. They do, of course.
No, they do. Yeah.
So when they make really bad mistakes, what we would perceive as like, why are they doing that? It's calculated. And I can't always express I understand why, but there's somebody that's weighed in on that and calculated. And if we delay this, if we offset this, that's really the tactical thing.
Right.
I kind of think they're waiting to see what happens with the next election.
Exactly.
So then they can get back in there and just pardon them or whatever.
You can stop the investigation.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. Is they're thinking that the House, which is very likely, is going to flip to Republican, and they'll just quash it.
They can just shut it down.
But why doesn't the average person, because I'm no rocket scientist, I can see through it. How come others can't? And how come
they don't want to?
The party, the law and order party, how come the normal everyday person doesn't see what is going on?
They don't want to?
Well, what they consider law and order, slogans are something that are big on the right. drill baby drill, law and order. They always have these catchphrases.
They're good at messaging. They're excellent at messaging.
And it's the simple messaging. It's just to keep everybody chanting about something. And they USA, USA, and they suddenly feel like they're part of something. We're all USA.
Right?
So it's a weird approach, but it works for them. And I would offer that. Why do they keep doing that? Why do they keep going back to that well of people should be able to see through this? It's because they don't want to see through this. They don't see the elections as something that's going to benefit them.
Or is it that that's acceptable because the other party just wants to take my guns?
Well, you can be as outraged as you need to be, right? You can create your own victimization, which is something they do very well. They won't allow me to say Merry Christmas. I mean, how do you even arrive? So I can understand where somebody gets in this paranoid fantasy about their guns or whatever, but geez, how do you arrive at that year after year about saying Merry Christmas like the Christmas police are beating
no
up or
one's
something?
telling them they can't. I'm like, where are they getting this from?
But that's the way of it's a self-feeding thing. And that's the thing that we're not going to be able to defeat. You're not going to be able to express to them or show them a piece of information that is going to break through that script. They're doing that on purpose. That's the hard part to accept. And that's the hardest part I've had to accept is they're not just misinformed or uninformed and, as soon as I show them this or reveal this to them, they're going to be enlightened and then they're going to understand like I do. They don't want to understand. They want to be MAGA. I liked President Trump because he put America first. What does that mean? I mean, what does that even mean to you? What is it putting America first?
I would ask them, like, how?
But
yeah.
I mean, Hunter Biden, it doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter what the answer is. So they've become conditioned and they followed his lead, which is just keep talking, just keep the ball in motion, and nothing bad will happen to you. There are no consequences.
Right, and that's why, like, Ted Cruz goes after Big Bird.
He knows that we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, nobody on the right really is. They don't give a shit about it.
But don't they also?
They threw a fit over Mr. Potato Head though, and
don't they realize though how stupid you look? Yes, it gets us talking about it, but at the same time, I don't know. I can think about a lot of different things at the same time. But I'm going, this is ridiculous that we're talking about an 8-foot fucking bird puppet.
That's them dictating the subject. That's them controlling the narrative. But so instead of people worrying about, their people also, about worrying about these investigations and some really serious stuff that's coming out in the news about Bannon getting the subpoena and it turning into a indictment, a conviction here, or an indictment. Those kind of things are serious matters, and it's more comfortable to talk about Big Bird and talk about let's go Brandon and let's go. It's always this superficial stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's not policy
and they're also the party of because I listen to Howard Stern, but they're like, oh, we can't have the children hearing this. We can't. Janet Jackson, her nipple was shown during the Super Bowl. Oh, we got to pull their FCC license. But at the same time, they'll drive around, the children, with a fuck Joe Biden flag.
I know.
What about the children that are seeing that?
Yeah, balls on their tailgate and all that. Hypocrisy is alive, and they don't care, and they can justify it through any means possible.
And that's the one thing where we try to balance it on this podcast, where when we see bullshit on our side, we'll say it. Mm-hmm. And we try to be like, all right, let's reel back on going after the right, but then this Big Bird shit comes out and you can't help but make jokes.
You have to make jokes about it because it's so ridiculous.
And the biggest thing is hypocrisy. Dave Chappelle did a special on YouTube after the George Floyd thing. Conservatives were outraged. Oh, how dare Dave Chappelle say that? And then Dave Chappelle's getting heat for the transsexual things in his last special. And the left goes after him. And what we say is, hey, we have bigger fish to fry. Don't make this an issue. Don't make this an issue. If you listen to what he's saying, he's not really going after transsexuals if you really listen to that special. Yeah. But then the right embraces Dave Chappelle and being against cancel culture, even though they hate transsexuals.
And black people.
And they hate everything. They hate other things that Dave Chappelle says. So in this moment, they're fine with it until Dave Chappelle does another special, and then he says something they don't like. Then it's going to go back to,
Well, to put it into context, when Trump got hired in 2016 to be the president, he had his generals, as he liked to call them. Well, those guys were national heroes, and by their own right.
Right.
And who are those guys now? To the right? They're traitors.
Right.
So you had people like Jim Mattis, McMaster, Kelly. Those people went from being decorated war heroes, 3 to 4 star generals that led groups, battalions of men in war. And they went from being idolized on the right to being traitors because Captain Bone Spurs turned a sour cheek to him. I mean, here's a guy that's a draft dodger.
He's a cult leader.
Man. He is. But if you can convince people to do that with those gentlemen, and who's Dave Chappelle, right?
Like Liz Cheney. She is, I mean, I used to think she's way off to the right.
Yeah.
No. And I'm actually kind of a moderate. If you look at my beliefs, and I wasn't even a Democrat till like 4 years ago. I always like to maintain an independent because there's certain things I like on one side, certain things I like middle of the road. But now I'm perceived as so far left.
You didn't move though.
Yeah, I didn't move.
Yeah, the Republican Party is driven really hard to the right.
Yeah,
and it was Donald Trump that did that. I mean, it was already when Barack Obama was running for the nomination of the Democratic Party, I thought, no way, I feel guilty about this, no way is America ready for a black president. I am, but I don't think other people are. And I shouldn't vote other people's conscience. I learned that lesson. Barack Obama was a fantastic president. I did not vote for him in the primary. I voted for him twice after that. And I learned a lesson that don't worry about what you think other people think. And you're not going to win them over that way. But the right, one thing I was correct about, even though he did win and he was successful and a uneventful president when it comes to scandal, one thing that he did was outrage them in a way that there is no bringing them back.
Right.
Yeah.
2 points on Obama. I was naive enough because I come from New England and really it's the polar opposite of here. So here I am thinking I had 2 young kids at the time, and I'm like, my kids are going to grow up and not know what racism is like. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah,
right.
We're on our way. But
the second
it really did grow that.
The second thing is I arrived here probably about a year and a half before the Boston bombing, and it occurred while I was at work. And being from New England, I was horrified, shaken up. And Obama came on and was doing a speech just a couple hours afterwards. And one of my customers goes, "Oh, there's that N-word going off again." And I was just like in total shock. Just like, did she just say that?
That's how they talk here.
But then when Sacha Baron Cohen did his little stunt on his show and filmed it right here in Kingman or outside of Kingman.
Oh yeah,
The people, the mayor at the time. That is not what this town represents.
I'm like, you people don't get out enough.
Yes, it does.
I'm like, you people don't get out enough. You're not really listening to these folks. I go, that is exactly how they are. That is exactly.
Right. And why did he choose this town? There had to be a reason.
He knew. Yeah.
And that isn't, I'd argue that isn't really
that's not
legacy
anybody.
of the town. Those are not typically people that are from here long term. A lot of that's imported.
Right.
because even when I tell people, oh, I'm from Kingman, I was born and raised here, they're looking like, wow, I've never met anybody like you. So those people aren't from here, and they've brought a lot of that. Like when I was a kid, there was no black people here. In my high school, we had one black kid. So there wasn't a lot of organized hatred. There really wasn't. There wasn't any efforts of racism in that struggle. Not to say we would have been open to a big influx of folks, but it wasn't here. And this has been people that have moved here from other places. These are folks from Missouri and Alabama and Mississippi, and they move here and they bring that with them.
I do realize that it's just the silent majority is because, yes, there are many, 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 many fine conservatives in this town.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of good people, but for them to I just found it funny that they were so shocked that he would take a group of people from here and interview them, and that they would have said answers like that. I'm like, then you guys aren't listening to. I mean, that is a group of people. I don't want to say it's the entire town, but there is a pretty good majority of folks like that here.
All it takes is reading the Daily Miner Facebook comment page.
Right. Yeah, they'll say it. They'll proudly say it behind the safety of their computer screen.
Yep.
Like,
it's prevalent.
Yeah. So, Jim, you never really. What I like about all your posts is you're so logical and so matter of fact of how you describe it, especially the past administration and what he's damaging to the foundations of the country and the Constitution, and how he's tearing that apart. And he's kind of, I hate to say it, pulling us in a more fascist way. Mm-hmm. And the blind support that people have over this man, like we were just talking about, his first staff. I'm like, I'm sitting there going, oh, he's got some pretty decent people there. And my thinking was, okay, that staff is going to be able to reel him in and at least keep him, somewhat down the middle, which didn't happen. And they all turn on him. And, just like they turn on Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, who I think are horrible people.
Mm-hmm. And they've betrayed their values and their own spoken morals. I think that that was all a farce. He surrounded himself with people. Donald Trump didn't change. He's been that same person. I mean, I've known who he is. I wasn't a fan of his. I didn't watch his shows. But I've known who he was since the mid-1980s. He's somebody that was on TV.
Narcissist.
Yeah, I mean, and he was always that way. It was always about him and talking about himself in third person. But when he ran for president, and I cautioned people, I said, this guy's dangerous. I mean, any of those other 16 Republican candidates on stage would have made a fine enough presidential candidate. Donald Trump was about the only one that wasn't up there. And he opened his entire political career by making, a period joke with Megyn Kelly. That was his thing, was like, she's on a rag because she's so bitchy or something. I mean, right then and there, I thought, okay, at least half the women have got to just be repulsed by this guy.
you would think.
That's how you address a professional woman on TV. He says things that I've never heard a grown man say.
The rapists are coming over the border.
Yeah, all of it.
But I remember Snow and I were watching that debate, and just the way he was going after people and knowing what the culture was in this town.
I was like, he's going to be their nominee.
Oh,
yeah.
We were watching it going, he's going to.
We said that. We said that night, and the whole way, Snow and I would be doing this commentary back and forth. I'm like, okay, this is what's going to happen next, and we were I think we even went, he's going to beat Hillary.
And that's what really motivated them, was to have somebody as brazen and as offensive and as, just without any sense of ethics or gentlemanly conduct. That's what they wanted. Somebody who was going to call her names and lock her up and all that insult.
Remember the debate they had when it was just him and her left, and he was like, following her around the stage. I mean, like,
Physically
just
intimidating.
bizarre. And it's like, why would you're supposed to stand behind your podium, dude?
Yeah, and it's not like he's a tough guy or something. He's really a wimp. But
Yeah.
I don't understand why people are attracted to him. And that's one of the things is the tough guy crowd, this ultra conservative, kind of like toxic masculinity crowd, celebrates a guy that is really a wuss.
I know.
I mean,
Hillary could probably kick his ass. My money would be
I
on
think
her.
so too. It's just,
But
I don't get it.
Get back to the hypocrisy. Just say, what if when Hillary was in the investigation, she just chose not to answer the subpoena?
Oh, geez, that's unheard of. But she's a product of the government. She knew that isn't an option. You have to answer the subpoena.
Mm-hmm.
And even the guy, Gregory Clark there, that's under investigation is the architect of the, let's not confirm the Electoral College. He knew that he had to show up. He didn't answer the questions, and he had a form letter.
Right,
that
yeah.
But at
said,
least he showed.
Yeah.
See, at least he understood that. Even as a kind of a really a phony lawyer, he has some really weird ideas as a lawyer. He at least understands that basic premise of
Right.
you shall answer a subpoena by the Congress. So Trump did this during his impeachment hearings too. He just said, "Well, we're not going to allow
Right.
people to go speak."
But my thought at the time during the Russian investigation was, God, it makes you seem so guilty that you're not answering these questions and you're not showing up. What are you trying to hide? And that's what was going through my head. Now, I guess it turned out to be really, I can't say it was nothing. There was something there. Was it enough for him to get prosecuted or whatever? No, maybe not. Maybe, but I don't know. By just saying, no, I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not going to show up. Or I'm gonna say executive privilege on everything. That just seems so guilty. This same thing with 1-6. Oh, I'm claiming executive privilege, but you're not the president anymore. You can't claim executive privilege. But our court system is set up where they were like, okay, well, you have to turn these records over to Congress about your conversations about what happened on 1-6, and there's one judge that is able to block it, or at least temporarily block it.
And that's something that Trump has learned to exploit in our legal system, and I think our legal system has gotten wise to him. If you look at this most recent thing where they've told him, no, you are going to have to turn over the archive papers, and he automatically does the appeal, and they took it up pretty fast. They're going to make a decision on, November 30th. So they're really not allowing him to just game the courts. Because that affects their legitimacy. If you're just a stalling point, if you're just a point where things go off to die, then nobody's going to hold you with any legitimacy. And the people that are elected, appointed judges, they have some pride in what they do, just like the rest of us. They think what they do is legitimate and a foundation of our Constitution. So they don't want to be played by either side.
Right, and that's where at least, the hypocrisy of the last time when Obama was going to appoint a Supreme Court justice in his last year, and it was in March, and they said, no, that's too, no. It can't be an election year. The people should decide who gets to appoint because your term is ending. But then they push somebody through 3 weeks before the election. The hypocrisy of that, like, people, don't you remember what happened the last time?
But they celebrate that hypocrisy. That's kind of like the student bullies are getting a lesson in how to bully. Because they don't give a shit that it makes you mad. They don't give a shit that it's not fair. They think it's funny. They think it's hilarious that it bothers you and you can't do anything about it.
And that's the true nature of a bully.
It is.
They think it's hilarious too.
The madder you get, the funnier they think it is. The wronger it is. The more you realize that they set you up and you took it, you dupe, the happier they are.
That's why they use that whole owning the libs.
It's exactly why. So they allow you enough line, oh yeah, I really care about this. And then you're caught with this bad taste in your mouth. And they think it's hilarious, and they just keep replaying this. So to believe that they've got any moral foundation at this point, they don't. They will will lie and cheat on anything. It doesn't matter to them anymore. I think that their moral compass is broken. I think that's one thing that Donald Trump did that nobody else could do, is he could make them shameless. And he succeeded.
Yeah. I mean,
excellent point.
I mean, to think that we could turn a pandemic into a
celebration of defiance.
Yeah.
It is. The people that are unvaccinated, it's not because they don't understand science. They can function in every other part of their lives. Some of these people have professional careers. All of a sudden, this one thing is jamming them up. I mean, how many vaccines have you had in your life?
All the popular ones?
As a military man, I've had probably 2 or 3 times as many as anybody else.
Right.
Yeah, you have to go into
So why is that a sticking point on this particular mandate that military people have to be vaccinated?
Because he knows that he can make a political divide on it. That's what it's about.
Yeah, he's doing it for himself.
Okay, but I'm saying I understand the Trumper way of it, but why for military personnel, why is it so hard for them to accept, I have to get this, I have to get that, I have to get that, A, B, C, D, but why won't you get E?
Because this is political now. It's never been political before, ever. I mean, when we got polio, and we got smallpox, and we got all those things in the military, it's because you're in the military. This is the first time that it was ever a political thing. In my lifetime, in 50 years, a half a century. I mean, never before was a president who came out in objection to it, especially one that had already had COVID, almost died from it, and then got the vaccine, and his family and everybody around him, and then he told other people not to do it. So, this is purely a political thing. It's an act of defiance.
And even though it came out under him, it's like that.
Would have taken a victory lap. Why not?
I know. It's mind blowing.
And he tried to even have it called the Trump zine or something. I mean, he really does want to take credit for it. But he knows, and his followers do, that are following this line, this is their last act of defiance. If Joe Biden succeeds at wiping out COVID, then he'll be a winner. We can't have that, so let's die instead.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the big
it's a suicide.
The big part of the infrastructure bill. They took out most of the social programs that the right had a problem with to get the bill through. Most of them, not all of them. And it was something Trump couldn't do. Trump, I guess, promised a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. So now it's $1.2 trillion, and it passed. And the 16 representatives that Republicans that passed it are now getting crucified, and they're becoming socialists over infrastructure.
And it's because it's going to be seen as a Biden success. So those 13 people were identified by a freshman congresswoman who is not on a single committee and is known as a kook. But she gave out their phone numbers, and there's people calling and making death threats to their own congressman. That guy just got
busted. Yeah. That one guy got busted for the death threats he called.
As he should. He called a congressman and told him he hopes his family dies. And
anyone who does that should be arrested.
Snow had a great point. Like, if you're going to run, that you should take a civics class.
Yeah.
Like you should know.
Well, I wish they'd have the civics in schools still, but they don't. They've cut that out of schools, so people don't know how the government works.
Why wouldn't you at least be a constitutional lawyer? I mean, if you were going to be a doctor, you would have a medical degree. If you were going to be a lawyer and practice in court, if you're going to be a constitutionalist, which is a congressman or a senator or somebody of higher office, shouldn't you have a degree in constitutional law? And most of them do. And that's a benefit. And we have perceived that, well, the last thing I want is a professional. I want somebody, an outsider. I want a Donald Trump who doesn't have a law degree, was never in the military. It was, go on and on and on. The guy's resume is anything but presidential. And they gravitated towards that. Somebody with the least pedigree to be the president is who they wanted. And this whole idea of turn the system on its head and we'll just upside down. Americans are the most spoiled creatures on earth. They don't realize. You just go to the grocery store. You could just drive to the convenience store. There's something always open. They're pumping gas all the time. There are things that in our lives here and in what we consider normal that if and when those things cease, there's people that aren't going to make it. They think they're survivalists. They've got some MREs and a whole bunch of rounds of ammunition. But what they really don't understand is when the lights go out and the electricity goes out and the water keeps coming out of quits coming out of your faucet, are you really prepared to deal with disaster and with this civil war that you're planning? Are you really as prepared as you? What are you going to do with your kids? You're going to go out and fight during the day and come home and kiss them on the cheek? I mean, this idea that we're going to be able to just end America as we know it and become this white nationalist thing it's a farce. I mean, who's going to pay your bills? Who's going to show up at the grocery store and open it in the morning? Well, it's a life or death job now.
You know, Snow was mentioning it the other day that she was listening to the radio, and Tom
Hartman?
Tom Hartman, wasn't he saying, like, hey, we should let these red states break away and survive on your own?
Yeah, he's planning on writing an op-ed on it, which I'm like, and I've been saying it, I'm like, you know what? I wish there was a way that we could do that for a few years to be like, yeah, go ahead, let them split off. First off, how are some of these states even going to make it? Because they take out way more federal money than they put into the system.
They're already subsidized.
Yeah, yes. You think Texas is going to be able to pay for all of you? I don't think so. I'm like, I wish they would allow us to do it. I honestly do, just for a trial period. I think it would be brilliant.
So what do we just get the rim, like the East Coast and West Coast, and then the red gets all the middle?
It's almost like that is what really has to do with stuff too. It's like that what separates, like it seems like almost all of the coastal states are blue because they've got the ports and whatnot, and then I don't know why it is like that. You know what I mean?
Well,
I have no clue.
Populated areas require more communal type of government and cooperation. That's why cities and places of higher concentrations of population, people tend to be more liberal or progressive. And the reason is you got to cooperate with other people. You can't hate everybody. You can't. I mean, you're going to have to get on the subway with them. You got to live, and they tend to get along. And they tend to be less uptight and indifferent to one another. Like when I'm in San Diego, people don't even look each other in traffic. They don't get mad about nothing. There's lots of traffic, but people are like, "What are you going to do?" This is every day, all the time.
Right.
So people become acclimated to other people.
That makes sense, because when people move out here, you hear a lot of times, I hate people. I had to get away from them all.
Yeah.
I want to be left alone, The
last pioneer.
Right. Well, yeah, and the big thing around here is Californians go home. But the people
exists.
The people coming from California though are actually getting out of California because they don't like the liberal ways.
They're ones that are attracted to this
I don't know if I would
lifestyle.
agree with that. I think people exit California because they can really exercise the capital investment they have in their home. I mean, I own a home here and I own a home in San Diego. And my home in San Diego is worth 4 times as much as my home here. So I can sell that house and I can take $500,000 from it and I can move here and I can buy a palace. So that's what a lot of Californians do. You have average guys and gals, average families that bought a home 20, 30 years ago, and that house is worth $750,000 now. So that is their retirement, and they are tired of being in a populated area. But they're not mainly conservative. They put on that aura when they come here, like, I want to get away from the people.
Yeah, because they know what they're moving into,
you're
too. I mean, if you obviously, before you'd move somewhere, you'd research it a little and know what.
Well, and obviously outside of Mojave County,
but there
Arizona is turning.
Hey, there are a lot of conservatives in California too, and perhaps a lot of them are moving out. I mean, I don't know the exact statistics, but I mean, I could kind of see that too, but then it's almost like too, you're like, well, then you kind of don't know your own state either.
But I don't think people are leaving for political reasons. They're leaving because, you're getting older, you're retiring, you can own an amazing house over here in Arizona, and toys, and no more worries. So
Yeah, you can pay a house off, buy it for cash, and like a nice house.
and toys and stuff, and that's why people do it mainly. I believe, and it's an attractive thing.
Right.
So back to 1-6. Do you think we're gonna go through this again? Do you think they'll be successful the next time?
I mean, I can't, with good, clear conscience, project that they're going to succeed, because that's the end of our union if they do. That's the end of our democracy. What they did on 1-6 was an attempt to overthrow the government. It was an attempt to overturn the United States Constitution.
But they were just angry and they were protesting.
And that's an easy way to explain it away. That wasn't a protest. It was very calculated. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read the Washington Post piece, The Attack, which is before, during, and after. It's 3 chapters, and it's not an easy read. It's not a short read. It is an easy read. It took me about 6 hours, and I read pretty fast. And I just finished the last segment of it yesterday. And there wasn't too many things in there that I was completely unaware of. I do the news thing daily. I read this stuff. But when you put it all together and compartmentalize it with the number of contributors, experts, and interviews, it was alarming. The amount of effort that went into the planning, the conspiracy behind this overthrow attempt.
Yep.
It almost succeeded. It was really close.
I didn't realize, I didn't actually hear it about what Steve Bannon said the night before, that tomorrow is going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be fast moving. It's going to be, and a lot of the people that they had tied into this, they were the real deal. You had some of these guys with the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, guys that had military experience. They had done some pre-planning. They knew which windows were not securable or bulletproof from the outside. There's only a few in the whole building. The fact that these people knew exactly where to go, and where to break in, and then where to go in and open the doors from within, that is mainly why that building was breached so quickly, because they had intelligence. And now that we're looking at these 5 or 6 congressmen that are involved in this pre-planning, Gosar being one of them, that's alarming stuff, to think that you've had somebody that's cooperated. We have stuff written right into the Constitution about this. You have the 14th Amendment, Article 2, that spells out that you cannot be in Congress if you've done this. If you've cooperated, conspired to overthrow the government, have an insurrection, and give financial support to it, that's it. You can no longer be a congressman. And we need to start exercising that. How do we prevent the next 1-6?
Yeah,
That's
but
how we do it.
the problem being is they're just talking about censoring Gosar.
Yeah. And
But-
that's a different thing. That's for the AOC
But-
infraction. That's
Yeah.
a different thing.
But what I'm saying is you're not going to get 60%. I think that's what you need to throw Gosar out, no matter what he does.
I agree. I agree. In that case, criminal charges are probably and that's why Speaker Pelosi has chosen that path where she's going to have criminal charges pursued, is I think she knows that's a dead end, that you're not going to be able to accomplish the 2/3 to throw a member out. The Republicans in the House have sold their soul. They're going to stick together on this, and they've showed this enough times.
It just seems like, though, because, again, I said I was a moderate. Before, there would be Republican candidates where I could get behind and be like, okay,
Sure.
well, I kind of like what that
Those
guy's
people
saying.
have left the party, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're no longer Republicans.
Well,
But-
I think,
but-
Adam Schiff said it best at the end of the last, not the last one, the first impeachment. He said that I realize that a lot of you are coming to this decision not simply because of your political affiliation, but because of the political pressure you're receiving within your own districts, meaning your own constituents are making death threats against you and your family. And he calculated that's really where a lot of this is coming from. It's not even so much just the direct loyalty to Trump. It's that any disloyalty is turned into a crisis for your family.
Yeah, but that's just going to lead to these more fringe candidates like the Matt Gaetz and the Marjorie Taylor Greens that are even more wacky than Trump.
It does, and that's really the chaos that is being sown. It doesn't mean that they become in power. It tears down just the foundation, the pillars of our government. What you've done is made it untenable. And what they're really welcoming is for the Democrats to join in. They're begging for the Democrats to break the rules or throw somebody in jail without the proper thing, because that ruins it. That ruins our system. And that's really what they need to do, is tear down our system, and then they can put an authoritarian in power like Donald Trump. That's really
to be like, president for life.
That's really what it is.
Well,
if they get in power, we're never doing this again.
And that goes into, what goes on with voting rights and stuff like that, is because if you make it harder for people to vote, then because in society in general, we're going in a more progressive agenda, like the generation. It might not happen.
So.
And I say this to our side because they get mad. Both of us are Bernie Sanders supporters, but we also go, well, you can't have everything all at once. Okay, we're moving in that direction, but we have people on our side who are like, nope, it's Bernie or bust. I'm like, no, you can't be like that. You have to slowly work your way.
You can be passionate and continue to fight and be without compromise that you're going to support your candidate, but don't cut your own nose off. If Bernie doesn't win, you still can't. You don't vote for the opposite.
Yeah, right. Bernie's even told you that himself.
Very much, and I think Bernie has got a lot of good ideas, and I'm also of the mindset that the only reason that we convince ourselves to ease into it is because we're afraid other people won't accept our decision. We're afraid that the opposition is going to be, whoa, slow down there, Tiger. Yeah. Well, who cares what they think?
Yeah, just like you were saying earlier, we've got to quit focusing on
what other people think. I mean, They want you to lose wholesale, so what are you doing? You're compromising with them? And I think the Progressive Caucus has done a very good job of explaining their position, that we know how this works. We keep compromising, we keep walking back, and then we get nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think the Progressive, for some reason I can't say her name right now, the Progressive Caucus lead, no.
Camilla Jayapal?
That's exactly it. Thank you very much for that assist. Congressman Jayapal explained very well that we're just supporting President Biden's agenda. Mm-hmm. We're not off on some fringy left-wing thing. This is literally Build Back Better. We're just saying, yes, sir.
Yes.
They're not doing some wackadoodle progressive thing. This is what the President of the United States ran on. It's what he won on. I mean, he got 80 million votes, and people said, yes, please, that. Yeah. And now those same programs are enjoying plurality of support.
Right.
So this is really what the Progressive Caucus is supporting, is the president. And we've got really more moderate Democrats trying to walk that back, and they're really just doing it to appease donors, big political fish, and those people they're not my agenda. I don't really care about those folks. So I have to admit, as a moderate kind of social guy, I really am following with the progressives on this, is quit surrendering, quit giving in.
Yeah.
Snow and I are big Bill Maher fans, and the one thing that he always says is, you have to get down and dirty and play like the Republicans on some of these issues and stop, being the nice guy.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't want to step over the line.
No, you have to follow the law.
Into their dissolve of our constitutional norms. You don't want to make it, this unethical thing. But if you're going to be a pansy, they're going to keep beating you up. And that's been pretty much my frustration with the Democratic Party my whole time as a member.
Well, yeah.
I know. I'm like, we need people with more balls. We just do.
Yeah, I've told Snow very recently that my frustration with it is like almost I want to switch back to registering as independent.
So you're not perceived as a wimp.
Yeah.
It's really it's that tough, and that's the thing that Democrats are going to just have to get hard on. Is they're really going to have to develop a little bit of a resistance to that. Don't get drug into the childish stuff and just avoid it. But there's people that are trapped in that, and that's where they live. That's where they know where their money's made when they really want to promote their stuff.
And I think Biden does a pretty good job of that, about not falling into the.
I agree.
For the most
traps
part
of that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even seem to matter. Every single Trump supporter I speak to, or somebody that's anti-Biden, they have a perception of him that is, I don't know really what they're talking about.
Right.
That's how I feel. I'm like, what are you even?
Did you see the thing the other day
understand.
when he was talking about the Negro Leagues, and Fox edited the comment on it that he said that Satchel Paige was a great Negro, when that isn't what he said. He goes to say Negro League, but he pauses, he catches himself, and then he says what. I'm like, okay.
Stutters, yeah.
So my thing is like, if they're trying to use that against them, how does that not backfire on them though? When they're like the white supremacist network, I don't get it.
That's the catch. Is like, wait a minute. I thought that would be one of the things that you liked about Biden.
Wouldn't you guys use this as a bonus then? Look, he's talking like us
It's
now.
the one thing that they agree with him on is that Negroes are bad. And that's the funny thing that I find about it too, is that when people bring that subject up, or he said something in the 1970s about this will be like a jungle. It's like, well, shouldn't you guys all be like wink, wink at each other? Because that's how you guys talk all the time. That's your thing.
Love that shit.
Yeah, I guess that's the owning the libs part of it, is you're making me feel bad
Right.
about some racist thing that you normally embrace. I'm like, this is awkward for me. Yeah. I'm supposed to feel bad about shit that you have no guilt on.
I hate calling them racist though, even though time and time again they do embrace it. There's very fine people on both sides.
I know. I don't always like saying that either, but I'm like, but when you look at it, they are. Like,
Well, the big one is like they'll say, well, the Ku Klux Klan used to be part of the Democratic Party, even though they don't get into, well, the party shifted.
Dixiecrats.
It was before you were alive.
The party shift. I'm like, then if you hate Democrats so much, and the Democrats did that, then why do you want to embrace the Confederate flag?
Yeah.
Why?
Or it's like, then why are you, if they're like, yeah, but the Republican Party was the one that stopped slavery. Abraham Lincoln stopped slavery. And I'm like, well, then why are you like, I mean, like almost trying to go back to, then why are you not on board with this then? So I don't understand your logic of bringing that up when it's like, then if you're a good Republican, why aren't you screaming out about this against it too? If that's how your party always was.
Here's the argument. This go back to 1-6. When you hear certain politicians around here speak about it, and I've had conversations with them like, well, how come you're not outraged about somebody attacking our Capitol? They'll bring out Portland, the protesters, they were burning down the cities. It was okay for them. And I'll be like, no, I was against that too.
Anyone who did that should be arrested.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm against that. Now, I agree with the people's right to protest the Black Lives Matter.
Of course.
I did. Mm-hmm. I was right there. I protested. I didn't loot.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I agree with them. They wanted to go protest on 1-6.
Right.
I agree with you protesting.
More power to them.
I did not agree with them breaking into the Capitol and causing all that harm. But you want to go and protest,
to be a
fine.
protest. I mean, it was really kind of, it was billeted as a let's come and have a wild time. We're gonna, it's gonna be fast moving.
And the more that we're learning about it. But I mean, just for some of the people who did leave when it got crazy, because there were people there who left. Not everyone went in too. So I agree with those people's right, even though I didn't agree with them. I'm like, yeah, you have the right to go and protest, all right, whatever. But yeah, you don't have the right to how can they not agree with us then and be like, oh yeah, I didn't like it when when the left did those things and changed it to where like they're committing crimes by rioting and looting. Okay, no one likes that. Then why aren't you calling out your side?
Yeah,
for
why
doing
can't
it
you
too?
differentiate between the protesters and the rioters?
Yeah.
That's something we've always done on this podcast. We go, no, there's a difference. There's a protest and there's a riot. Same thing on 1/6. There was protesters and there's rioters. Now, the one thing that's coming up tomorrow is closing arguments on the Rittenhouse case, and they've deployed 500 National Guard to be there in case there's unrest. And one of my friends said on Facebook, oh, they didn't do that at the Black Lives Matter protest. Well, maybe fair enough. Maybe there should have been. But
I'm pretty sure that they did with the Floyd case, didn't they? They had it in case it went.
I think
I could
that
have sworn
there
that I
was.
heard that they were getting.
Did they deploy National Guard? Not many, but there was National Guard deployed in here in Kingman at the George Floyd protest, right? There was at least a few of them.
I don't know. I can't remember.
I think there was a couple.
I don't know. I
Just
can't
in
remember
case.
that far back, but I could have sworn that any of those high-profile cases, pretty much ever since the Rodney King case, because what happened like after the Rodney King verdict was read, I think they do it on all the high-profile cases that have to do with.
Wasn't it Michael Brown in
like
St.
that.
Louis? Did I get the name right?
Yeah, I think
I think there was
too.
National Guard
Like,
there.
So what? Yeah,
And the Rittenhouse one.
I don't know how that judge is not removed from that case.
Well,
that is the worst judge I've ever heard comments from.
He does seem a little bit biased on that one.
And did you also hear his poor joke about the Chinese lunch or whatever?
Yeah, but again, that's one thing that the right goes on to and see. Well, they don't really care about the case; they care about this joke. No,
it's not that. It's to show that this judge,
he's
that's
biased.
just a step that's like, he shouldn't be saying stuff like that.
No.
He's the judge. How can we trust you to make good judgment if this is how you are?
And again, this goes back to hypocrisy is that I guess one person drew a gun on Rittenhouse, and he shot him. He shot them, and I guess he was running away. The first person he shot, he was running away from. But my point being is, and they'll say this, well, you should just complied. You should just, whenever a black person gets shot, well, you should just complied. Well, in this case, given a 17-year-old with an AR-15, that his mom drove him across state lines, the kid should not have had that gun. The kid should not have been.
His friend bought him the gun.
The kid should not have been in the situation. Self-defense or not, he should not have been put in that situation. At 17 years old.
No training.
Yeah, do you have the judgment of what's going on?
No.
Not whatsoever. There's a reason the cops were back. They're trained professionals. They have standards. They have rules. They have an idea of, how to control crowds, how to let people just blow off steam and jump up and down on a car. Those are things that you don't, aggravate the subject. And I look at it this way. You come to Kingman, Arizona. There's a lot of, let's call them constitutionalists, for lack of a better word. If you had somebody from California drive over here, a 17-year-old kid with an AR-15, and show up down at the parade, and he decides he's going to police Kingman, Arizona, because he doesn't feel you're doing an adequate enough job with your elected officials.
Especially if he was different skin color.
Darn right. How would that, set with the residents of Kingman, Arizona? That a California 17-year-old, minority came over here and decided he was going to be the police today because you guys are all screwed up. There's a lot of people that would have met him with physical resistance,
right.
Just kind of like the kid in Rittenhouse.
Well, okay, say it's in a Walmart, and somebody carries in an AR-15, and what do you hear whenever there's a mass shooting? Well, if I was there, I would have gone up and I would try to stop him. Well, that's pretty much what the people that went after him were trying to do.
Yeah.
They were
Stop
trying
a
to.
mass shooter,
The
basically.
one that hit him with a skateboard was trying to disarm him.
Yeah.
Now, I guess it's the hypocrisy level.
Well, who feels
it.
comfortable with that? I mean, whether you're conservative or liberal, why would some kid, and not even a very competent or tough-looking kid, why would that person make you feel comfortable that he's around you and your family with a firearm like that?
Yeah.
With a gun that's specifically made for killing human beings? I would feel like, as a 50-year-old man, as a veteran, I would feel like, hey, kid, I don't need you protecting me. I could beat up you and your whole family, so I don't need your protection, especially with a gun. So I really don't understand why people feel confident or comfortable when those people come around you. Do you
I know.
really need
I
some,
don't want him around me.
Do you really need some fat little kid to protect you with a rifle? Holy shit, I don't. That's really where I draw the line of putting it into a personal perspective. I don't need another man showing up and taking care of my family.
I mean, it even goes back to I lived in
town.
I lived in Northeast during 9/11, and the first time I went to New York City after 9/11, it freaked me the fuck out to see police on every corner with AR-15s. I was just like, oh. And I'm like, these are competent people, but still, I felt freaked out.
It's a new America. You know, I'm a world traveler. I've gone to a lot of places where that's commonplace. You know, you walk down the streets in Israel, there are armed young people on every single corner. And it's because they live with a real terrorist threat every day, every moment. And, you know, that's something that's normal there, but it's something that didn't become normal back home for me until 9/11. And I went to New York just weeks after the September 11th attack. My little brother got married up there, and this was a pre-planned thing, and it was October 6th, I think it was my mom's birthday. And I flew up there and flew right over the Twin Towers, and they were still smoldering as you looked out the window. There was still all this activity and stuff. And New York had a little bit of a special place to me. My first warship was out of New York, the USS Normandy. I was stationed in Staten Island, New York. And we were right across from the Statue of Liberty and the Twin Towers. And every time I'd pull in or out of there, it was always a treat coming home to New York. I mean, they treated us like we were hometown heroes. And going and seeing that place without those buildings, and I'd taken pictures of those buildings, and seeing that changed so much for me.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing that wreckage.
That's about the exact time frame that I was there. I mean, almost to that week, because my mom lived in New Jersey, and every few weeks I would commute from Boston down to New Jersey, and then just crossing the George Washington Bridge and looking over. Once you get across the bridge and you see the Twin Towers there, and a few weeks after, I went to go see U2 at the Meadowlands. It was that week. And I just remember, because when you sit in the parking lot of the Meadowlands, you look over across and you had a clear view of the Twin Towers, and they were no longer there, which I'd seen it on TV, but when I saw it in person, I saw the smoke still coming up.
Yeah.
That just really, holy shit.
Shit gets real.
Yeah.
It sure does.
Fuck. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we go from here. You know, I don't know how it gets better.
I really do think this is going to come to a crescendo. I don't know if it's going to be everywhere. This area is a hot spot. All across the Midwest, there's different areas. But I think there's going to be a point where there's violence. And I think that's going to hopefully wake a lot of people up. Like, wait a minute, we can't be killing each other over this.
Right. Like we said, say Kingman is 15% liberal. No, maybe 15% tops is liberal. 85% is conservative. There's probably at the same point 15% that's radical conservative here, and all the rest, you know, so that we have 30%. So there's 70% conservative people that are generally good people, and hopefully
But they're swept up in something right now. I mean, they really are.
Yeah.
I mean, even the ones
Yeah.
that are taking a blind eye to it, they may not repeat or they may dismiss. Like, well, I don't like it when he says those things. I wish they'd take that Twitter away from
Yeah,
him.
no, a lot of
They,
people say that.
you know, but where do you draw the line? When do you realize that you own it? You can't support somebody just because your stock market portfolio is going well.
Right,
He's
but
doing bad things
at,
too.
at the same time, the stock market is doing way better than it was.
Doing way better than it should.
Wait, exactly, the economy isn't the stock market. But the same people that said who justified everything Trump did because of the stock market profile.
Aren't taking the same approach to Biden.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's doing better under Biden than it was under Trump. They're not supporters of Biden. And I had people tell me directly to my face, well, I support him for the stock. Have you looked at your 401k?
I know. I've heard that one a lot
I
too.
have. And I made money just like everybody else did during the time that Trump was president. Do I give him credit for that? Not really. I mean, we're already on that trend. I was making money for 6 years before he showed up. So that was kind of superficial. If they wanted to give him credit for that, no argument. But now that it's still happening, oh, you just don't make that argument anymore. Roger. You know, I get where, like you said, you've used the word hypocrisy a couple times. That's what it represents. To me, that's something that's important to you until it's not. That's really what it's more about, is you keep parading that, you keep promoting that, and then when it lands on your face, now you really don't hold that position. So I've done well with the stock market. I know exactly what Trump did to give it a little bit of a bump, removing environmental protections and worker protections. He did. He made people that are investors like myself more money. But he didn't help anybody out. You know, when it comes to the people that are in those jobs that lost those protections, those are really the people that suffer. The fact that I made a couple of percentage points on my portfolio, that didn't change the world.
Yeah. All right, well, Jim, this has been really good, fun, enlightening.
I know.
So this was a good one.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself.
All right. So you're in town for another couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm gonna be here for.
Shit, we might have to have you back on again in the next couple
we'll
of weeks.
do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Continuous conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's getting late. I have to work tomorrow.
Oh,
I
big
know.
dumb job, getting in the way all
Yeah,
the time.
stupid job.
I
Freaking
gotta do the
jobs.
same thing.
I had to get jobs because the unemployment was running out because I was living out off the socialist programs. So.
Oh yeah, socialist Democrats.
All right, so we'll wrap this one up. Thank you, Jim, and thank you for your service. Thank you for all your conversations on Facebook. It's too bad Snow wasn't on there because Jim is a good follow.
I know. He probably is. It's like, I'm waiting for a better social media platform to come back.
Hang in there.
All right.
Right?
All right, we'll say goodnight there.
Over now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, bye.